only.
I'm here. Mayor, my name is Robert Serafini. I'm a resident of Monroeville.
You sign in, Bob?
I am doing that now,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
I have three short little things I want to say. First, I want to thank Mike Adams and his crew for who is the superintendent of Monroeville. They do a great job. They did something for me in the community this past week. I'm very thankful. I called them and thanked them, and I wanted to say thank you again personally over the mic. He does a great job. One of the reasons I live in Monroeville is the kind of service he supplies. Okay, second of all, Mr. Mangini's here. Do you mind if I ask him a question, sir? Mr. Mangini, last week you had stated that you weren't going to do anything here in Monroeville.
Please state your name for the record, sir.
Keith Mangini, President of Huntley & Huntley.
I appreciate you coming last week and all the people that talked, because I was completely ignorant of all this stuff, and you helped a lot. One thing you did say is you weren't going to do any of the drilling for it.
We are not.
Okay? Mr. Ratcher answered a question after he talked and everything, saying that it was not binding unless it was in writing. And I'd like to know if you would be willing to write something, sign something that Mr. Ratcher would write up to that effect.
I would consider it. We'll talk about it.
I would appreciate that, because like you said anything's possible until it's in writing. And
Well, yeah, that's correct. I mean, if somebody comes up and makes a public statement,
That's
a public
correct.
meeting, they cannot necessarily be held to that
That was
public
one of the
statement.
things I caught, and I think he seemed like a very nice guy. I've never met him till last week. But like I said, I don't trust anybody with a maybe. Like I said, I would appreciate if you and the gentleman here would get together and maybe get something to sign that would appease the council.
Well, that's up to council whether or not
I
they want
realize
to
that,
do
sir, but you have the authority to draft something.
If council gives me the authority, I do have it, yes, sir.
I think a signature on both parts would be greatly appreciated, plus the draft of the ordinance. I think that would just eliminate a lot of stuff. And like I said, that's the only thing I have to say, Mr. Mangini.
Well, thank you. I mean, you're asking me to agree to something I don't even know what it says yet, basically.
Well, I'm asking you to get
And
together,
what
Mr.
and what
Ratcher.
for exchange? You know, what are we bartering for?
This gentleman right here says you have to sign something for it to be honored. And you said you're an honorable man, and you said you're not going to do it.
That's right.
So let's get together and get it in writing, so whatever the ordinance is, and we'll get that cleared up. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Everything's down to be certain you signed it, and that's it. I think that's the way to do it, Mr. Mangini. You and Mr. Ratcher, with the blessing of the council, hash it out and get that all taken care of.
All right, we'll consider it.
I mean, you have some do's and don'ts. He has some do's and don'ts. Get the do's and don'ts together and sign it up.
Okay.
Would you be...
The only thing I want to make clear is my participation is strictly at the direction of council.
That's what I said, sir. I said the council...
He did.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. Now, here, third item I have, I don't know when this is going to come up, but Mr. Little is going to read a letter, and I have one statement after the letter. I would like to hold my third statement until such time as he reads that letter.
Can do, Bob.
May I? Thank you.
Okay, Mayor asked me, and Mr. Serafini asked me, there's a letter here from a Miss Cheryl Boise, Point Circle, dated August 4th, 2017, to Mayor Aracinco and Monroeville Council. I'm sending an update related to logging to the mayor so he can share it with all of you. I was at Citizens Night, but clearly you had a great deal going on. Really? On Saturday, July 29th, a few of my neighbors and my husband and I found it necessary to have our properties repinned, new stakes put in, and we also have placed signs along our back property line. In addition, we took pictures in this area for verification purposes. The reason for the expense of hiring a surveyor was due to the recent marking of trees for logging in the area behind our yards. This is an area between Turnpike Gardens and Neighbors Creek. We are on Point Circle. We have found were trees marked for logging that were within our property, as well as trees that are within our buffer zone just outside our lines, hence the signs. The concern is that they may have come over the line to remove the trees, given that they were located and disturb our yards. However, I have been in contact with Mr. Hugus, and he has indicated that the 25-foot buffer zone is still in place. He has been responding to my emails, which I greatly appreciate. We have given him permission to use our path in the woods if he needs to look at the area for any reason and mark trees. I have also been in contact with the solicitor as well as the forester involved in this logging project. The forester has also responded to our concerns, and he is aware of the problem with the property lines. He has spoken to the logging company owner twice, relaying our concerns, and did call him to let him know what he found after the surveyor completed his work. In addition, I sent a certified letter to the logging company in Ohio and outlined the initial issues. Here's the underlying problem. It should have been the responsibility of the landowner prior to contracting with the logging company to have a very clear picture of where their property lines run. In addition, if an error was made involving our properties, then how many other places were errors made impacting other backyards in the area to be logged? Given the size of the area to be logged, there was no reason to come into anyone's yards or log within a buffer zone. Buffer zones eliminate these types of conflicts when they are honored and protect everyone involved, including the person logging. To remove another person's trees without their knowledge and consent, then pay someone else for them, should have some form of legal ramifications. I also expressed concern to the forester and logging company related to the pipelines that run over that hillside. I will tell you, in years past, when there was fog or a great deal of humidity, I could smell the gas due to that additive. Fortunately, that smell has been gone for a while, which is why I'm concerned about disturbing the area around that line. Just one side note. I'm not sure what can be done about this. My husband gave the solicitor information on this situation. When you look at the value of our 1/4 acre lots, land value only, valued somewhere around $23,000, and compare that to the land that was logged and will be logged, something is wrong with land values. How can land, many acres, with commercial logging value only be paying $6 to $8 in county tax? You can calculate the other taxes from those figures. I do understand about the assessment process. However, I think about people like my grandmother who pay property tax in Monroeville well into her 90s. She was on Social Security only and had a small savings. How many people in Monroeville are currently in that situation? Meanwhile, here are acres of land being used to generate commercial logging revenue, and the taxes will not even pay for the 2 tanks of gas. I hope you can see what I mean. This does not sound right. I understand from Mr. Hugus no permits have been issued yet for the proposed logging, and he has requested additional information. They should have waited to mark trees when they knew where the actual property lines were, and only if they received the permit. One last thought. I spoke to several surveyors. It was brought to my attention that one municipality in Butler County requires a planting of trees as replacements when trees are removed for situations like logging. Some states also require that, but not Pennsylvania. Interesting requirement given my conversation with the DCNR about logging alone versus forest management. We will update you if any other issues occur, and this is as the situation further unfolds. Respectively, Cheryl Boyce, Point Circle.
Once again, Robert Serafini. Mr. and Mrs. Boyce, they're next-door neighbors of mine, and we share the same problems as we did with the Point Circle Association across the street doing the logging and everything else. This is coming up. We know it. We're not a friend of the state but what I wanted to put on here is Wexford, even though they're cutting trees and that out in Wexford, they have a law out there on the ordinance whereby any tree over 18 inches in diameter, they have to replace that with another like tree. And I'd like to get that somewhere in one of our ordinances if we can draft something to that effect. Because, like I said, I even know for a fact Wexford, after they were all done with the job, paid a company to go out there and count the new trees that were planted in deference to that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Hey, in a situation like this where there's a very good possibility that they're logging off of their approved land, can we put a halt on activity until this is straightened out?
They haven't started logging yet. Like I said, this is coming up.
And I get that, but they're already working by marking trees.
Yes.
Can we make them stop until they can verify these, property lines?
We did that on our own for 3 lots up there because they were marked. And it was just
Mayor,
terrible.
we cannot hear.
He's coming up.
I'm sorry, Joe. In answer to that, we have quite a few trees in our backyards, the 3 backyards that were already marked. They're painted, and they're definitely in our lot. So, in the 25-foot buffer zone, which is past that, there are so many more trees that are ours that are marked. And like I said, I don't know what you can do about it, but I don't think they should be back here even marking the trees until they got permission from the state.
Well, that's actually exactly my point. The residents did a lot of legwork, paid for their property lines, surveys to get done. Would it be within our jurisdiction, I guess, to say, stop, you're going outside of this, there is a legitimate contention to
The municipality did not know they were marking the trees. It came to our attention. They did submit an application at round about the same time. We had a lot of questions and a lot of comments to their application. They had to submit some more information. One of the more difficult things that we have is identifying property lines in the field, especially in a wooded area. You really just don't know where they're at unless you find iron survey pins. And that's what Mrs. Boyes and I had a lot of conversation about. And she had went on her own to have it surveyed, so we know where that is in the field. Even if there's a conflict with surveyors, the only one that can resolve that conflict are 2 surveyors. They're the only ones within the Commonwealth that can solve those problems. So, you know, in this instance, it seems like a lot of people are getting their property surveyed, which will help this issue. But we didn't know they were marking the trees.
Can we require the actual property owner that's logging to survey their property?
It is not a requirement in the ordinance to have it physically surveyed.
We can start cutting.
Can we have that?
them plant a tree like you said in Wexford? That sounds like a great
Well,
idea.
you got to understand that, you know, our ordinance was very watered down by the
Attorney General.
by the Attorney General's office. So
Could it be possible that they're marking these trees not to be cut? It seems like there's so many
No,
of them.
they're the good trees. They're the good trees that they're marking.
Oh, okay, well, I'm thinking
Good
along
oak
the
trees.
property line,
I mean-
possibly they're marking them, don't cut.
We understand that, you know, there's some questions about where, when, what trees. We have not issued permits. I've been in contact with the timbering company, with the forester. So, you know, we're aware of the situation and you know, we're working on the details.
Would it behoove council to have Bob maybe talk to the Attorney General's office and talk to them to see about, you know, this property line business?
I do, and understand, I get
mean,
it.
I don't know.
You dotted your i's, crossed your t's, and took it upside the head 12 times, and this was a very hot-button issue for us.
We've been
and
dealing with
I
this
don't
for
agree,
years,
right.
and he's been doing a great job.
He's been doing a phenomenal
I mean,
job.
I agree.
And now,
But something
after
more has
all
to
that
be done.
legwork has gone in, I don't think it's, I just don't want them to get the easy way out of it, to tell you the truth.
I mean,
Make them do their work.
We have made it very clear to the timbering company and the forester that they are not to begin until they get their permits from the municipality.
Can we go ahead
During
and look
that
at
board-
Wexford's, though, at the same time, before we issue the permit, see if we can do
Why don't we let
anything?
Bob talk?
Here's what's happening right now. With respect to the replanting, I have a call into the Attorney General asking if the replanting will violate the acre ordinance in their opinion.
Okay, good.
Okay. There's a possibility that it does not. There's also a possibility that it does, and nobody has reported. First of all, Wexford is not a municipality. It's maybe, I don't know,
The township.
it could be Pine Township, it
Yeah.
could be Marshall
Pine-
Township. It's one of those townships.
Pine,
Okay.
McCandless.
But it's possible that nobody has reported their ordinance or challenged their ordinance under the acre statute like they challenged
They
ours.
did ours, okay.
But one way or the other, I'm going to get an answer to that situation. Now, the
Right.
other issue that has been brought up is whether trees are being marked on property that's not owned by the Point Circle Association.
This is the other
No, this
side.
is not the
This is the
association.
Shri Shri
Okay, I'm
Shirdi
sorry, I'm sorry.
property.
Okay.
Oh, this is...
My apologies.
This is on
to
the-
the
this
Point
is on the
Circle
other side of the hill.
Association.
There's
What-
two
what
different
property is
sides of the
that?
Two
street.
different
Shri
tree
Shri
problems.
Shirdi
Okay.
Baba
Well
Temple.
done.
I think we should, at the very minimum, write a letter to the
Shri Shri
temple
Shirdies?
and tell them, hey, we think you might be marking trees that aren't on your property, and please direct your, tree marking people to get in touch with us and demonstrate to us that these trees are in fact on their property.
Because I would argue, layman, that you said they couldn't do anything, get started, right? I'd argue that they have gotten started, they just haven't got a saw out yet.
I agree with you.
I'm not trying to create more work for you, I'm just, we went back, and I know I am, Bob, but it's just, we tried to prevent this to begin with. Now I don't want them to even take advantage more of what's going on, and I mean, the residents have done every single thing that they possibly can. Now they're just trying to preserve what's actually theirs.
I agree that Paul should talk to the temple,
Shri Shri Shirdi.
whoever, and, let them know that we want to know what's going on prior to.
Okay.
I mean, and understand that we have sent a detailed email to the Forester of Record wanting a lot of additional information. And part of that was about the buffer and the tree markings and those things. So we have been in contact with them. It isn't, we haven't thrown a blind eye to this, believe me.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I
think
know
what we
that.
need to do
I
is
know.
probably get a letter out to them that says that, we have reports that you are marking trees that are on other people's property, and we want an explanation.
Would you do that,
Better
Paul?
do that by certified.
Here's another thing, Mr. Ratcher, before you do that. I'd like to find out, are the temple, take care of the temple, as we've all known down there, the people to contact, or the attorney who bought the land to begin with? I don't know. Wasn't there an attorney who bought that land?
No.
I thought it was in his name.
The property of record is under it's actually not under it's the Shri Shri Shirdi Baba
I
Temple.
understand what-
But it's under an actual individual from the church organization.
But is he not the attorney who bought the land to begin with?
No.
I thought he was the attorney.
His name's on the permit application, though,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
He may be the person holding it in trust, just like if you deal with the Catholic diocese,
Right.
the bishop's name is on every piece of property.
And I can't
in the
pronounce his
Catholic
name, so I'm not
I
even
can't
going
either,
to
that's why I
try.
didn't mention it.
You did a good job on the name of the temple.
Mayor, I have a question.
I thought you did.
Sure.
Say 4 times.
When the contractor or developer over by I'll call it the Penn Monroe property, started work without the appropriate permits, the county and Monroeville put stop work orders on them, did they not?
Correct.
Can't we put stop work orders on these people until they get the proper permits?
In my perspective, they have not begun. They may have marked trees, but, they have not begun work. They have not mobilized equipment. But if it's
Was
If
an idea.
it's the opinion, then I'll be more than happy to issue one tomorrow morning.
It was a question. I don't know the answer.
I think what we need to do is contact them and see what they tell us, and if we're not satisfied with their answer, and you do find that they are marking trees that are off their property and they don't do anything about that, then I think it might be appropriate.
But again, I'll go back to,
Take
it is
that
very, and we've been through this before, it is very hard for the municipality to interpret where property lines are in the field. We are not surveyors.
But we can at least use what they've had surveyed already. as
I
they
agree with
stand,
that,
at
but
least
we're
right
talking about a
there.
very large parcel
know.
of land. We're talking 100 and some acres.
Right.
Fair enough.
We will follow up with it in the morning.
Thanks, Paul.
It's a mess.
It continues, Bob. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies